All right. How's everyone doing today? So we should be live now. Hope everyone is having a pretty good day out there. Let's see who's here. You got DeGreen Shiz and Curtis, your average player. Team Travish, Java Kuma. See who's here. You got DeGreen Shiz and Curtis. Looks like I'm open twice here. Got the echo intro back. Sorry about that. Well, welcome everyone. So if people have questions about the market, you can start asking them in the chat, and we'll sort of go one by one through it. You can ask me anything you'd like about the market. I don't have too much to start today off with. I always like to start it off with a little bit of just sort of where my mind is at. I'm more interested in sort of the global economic situation. I think that will likely connect with cards to some degree. And my personal opinion is if that situation sort of gets better, the Fed doesn't have to continue these historic, rate cuts, rate moves. I think the Pokemon market probably, as long as that doesn't happen, I think we've pretty much bottomed out. I think that if it's sort of what we've been saying on this channel since December, I think so far it's panning out, which is that really December was sort of the low of the demand sort of leaving, at least for now, and that we're in more of a period of some people coming, some people leaving. The supply side, obviously, there's going to be things that as we continue to talk about, that there's going to be more supply of. That's the stuff that's at more risk for continued retrace, despite what sort of global economic things occur. So I would expect prices to mostly level out, maybe go down. Some things, 10 to 20% more. There'll be some things that haven't sold recently that will suddenly have a low sale, but really it's just that it hasn't sold in the last few months. We're having some people coming out with videos talking about things, kind of panicking about certain items dropping 40%. Well, it's like, yeah, it's dropped 40% because it hasn't sold in the last 3 months or 4 months since all the similar cards dropped 30 to 40%. You're going to find examples that where a card sold a few weeks ago and then sold today and is down 20%. Part of that, though, is just sort of market swings in price from one auction to a buy it now. I sold a card last week for $450. It's then sold in an auction for $250. That's a humongous difference, a $450 sale from a $250 sale. You're going to find those types of things. I wouldn't overreact. That's not an indicator of where the whole market is or where the whole market's going. I think just general being aware of, are things still selling? Is there still decent liquidity? That's important. I still think there is, despite sort of the anxiety in the market. So that's overall where we're at. I do think that if the global economic, if there's more of a downturn, if it's a sustained couple of year downturn, I can't see how the Pokemon market is going to do well during that period, over a long 2-year period. I think what happened in the pandemic with stocks really, really falling, but cards doing extremely well is more about, and then obviously stocks rebounded really quickly, later, really after many months after the summer, sort of into the fall, into the winter. I think a lot of that has more to do with, we've talked about that at length on this channel, that people were on unemployment. People were still employed, but spending less on vacations, less on going out to eat. They were at home. They could more easily shop. They had a lot more time to do an online hobby like this where they're shopping online, engaging in online communities. I think all that stuff really, despite maybe some like economic fear during those periods, the fact that there was just so much money in the system and all those other, effects just made Pokemon boom hugely. Plus the fact that it was just extremely undiscovered hobby, extremely undervalued, very small bit, versus like the amount of people who might be interested in it, all those types of things. I think now we're in a much different situation. And I think a global downturn where people are being laid off, where the Fed can no longer really get us out of it quickly or wants to, and is really focused on inflation, could hurt the market more. But I don't think anyone knows really. You're gonna have a lot of people online, a lot of people telling you that the market's gonna, how to prepare for a recession. Recession's definitely gonna happen for 2 years. People make those videos at all moments, all the time. There certainly is risk right now, quite a bit of risk. You have to take it seriously, but it's possible in a few months from now, things have stabilized and recover, globally 6 months from now or so. And we don't go into some sort of full blown, very serious recession, depression that could last years. That also could happen. So it's just important to know that those are both options. And, I've done some like consults this week, and that's what I've been telling people, trying to just think of, ideally, right, you prepared already for that. You've been preparing for that, by selling a certain percentage or at least being in a decent, enough cash position or have decent enough income or be in a field or a job that feels fairly, recession proof or somewhat recession proof. But reality is that's hard to do. And you can only, if you didn't do it, you can only deal with the present now. And I think for a lot of people, it makes sense to probably sell right now 10 to 15%, just to get a little bit of, reduce some of their risk a little bit, particularly if they have a large collection. Then if things stabilize or recover, great, 85%, the rest of your collection has gone up in value. And if things haven't, then or get worse, you at least have a little bit of buffer, a little bit of cash reserve because we're still in a market where things sell and there's plenty of people buying and bullishness. But I think for people who believe in this market, who like this market, who enjoy this market, like myself, who have other assets, who are in, who are diversified in things, for me, I'm still buying. It's just very targeted, only specific things. A lot of the stuff I'm buying is not even in Pokemon. It's in other TCGs and cards. And then just slowly working on collection goals, slowly working on collection goals when good deals come up. So, overall, despite what people out there are telling you, generally speaking, we're about the same as we were in December a few months ago, overall, the market. And a lot more, there's more anxiety because people are more, I think, have discovered it or are more aware of it, or it's starting to become more common knowledge. More YouTube videos are being made about it. And also just the global economic situation in the stock market and crypto. I think crypto falling a huge amount scared a lot of people. And that sort of anxiety, that fear, it's like, oh my gosh, these things can just like go to zero overnight, So yeah, so if you have any questions about anything, that I just covered there, or comments, feel free to leave them. Otherwise, let's jump into some questions. And I just want to reiterate what I said in my last video. Don't panic. Your feelings and your emotions right now, whether very positive, negative, they don't have that much value in terms of like making decisions off of them. People are very much a prisoner of the moment, and whether the moment's very bullish or very bearish, we're often sort of a prisoner of that. And it's better to just sort of be patient and have a sort of long-term game plan. So now that game plan could be like, I'm going to sell 10 to 15% right now so that if things fall further, I'm going to have a little bit that I can put back into things. And if things recover, then I'm going to have only sold a small percentage rather than selling everything and then sort of being out of the hobby. So, there are sort of strategies or ways to consolidate your collection or whatever that I think are really sensible. And then there's stuff that's probably people are doing more out of fear. Or greed, because there are people I think now who also you can try to buy way too much of a falling knife because of greed. So there's a lot of fear right now, but there's also going to be people who are probably acting a little bit out of that emotion too, of like wanting to get rich quick, rather than having sort of a realistic sort of long-term plan. All right. Tomster0202 says, thoughts on PSA potentially no longer being the go-to for grading with the recent first edition issues. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna matter much in the long run, to be honest with you. I mean, it's definitely a problem that grading companies are not grading things correctly, but that's always going to happen. There's always going to be new fakes that are hard to catch. The issue is like, are they going to develop systems? Are there going to be ways to catch these things at all? Or is it just like, well, it's a very easy thing to fake and we don't have the ability to catch it. That sort of thing would be really problematic, but I don't know why PSA would be the only grading company not able to catch it in the long run. Your average player says, thoughts on the Federal Reserve? Not too many thoughts that I think are particularly valuable. I watched a speech yesterday. Markets are crazy, way overreacting positively, overreacting negatively. There's just a lot of anxiety, a lot of people day trading these days, a lot of short-term gambling that I think people are thinking of as investing or smart plays, or like a lot of people who've lost a lot of money trying to get it back quickly, which increases sort of the craziness and the overreactions. Patience, being calm, whatever market you're engaged in, not overreacting to your feelings one way or another. Those things are really like that. The temperament is really important in investing. But yeah, thoughts on it. They did what was leaked to the New York Times or whatever. They did what people expected. I guess, I think you can, they're basically going to wait and see what happens. They said that they hope they won't have to do, maybe only one more, 0.75, maybe 0.5 in the next, it's they don't know. It's going to have to do, it's very unpredictable. I think he even acknowledged, in his speech or in answering the questions, how unpredictable these things are. A lot of people online who are experts, or saying that they're experts, they want to tell you, this is for not in the Pokemon world, but like these stock channels out there, they want to tell you like what this means and I'm going to analyze it and what's going to happen here. And I just think a lot of that's, we're really in sort of a wait and see. And I think that with that, you make a plan, right? So the plan is, because I don't know, or because, and when the more you don't know, the more risk, the more possible realistic outcomes, the more risk there is, the more potential there is for risk or for downside. If it's realistic that things could fall really high percentage in a short period of time, you have to factor that into your decision making. It doesn't mean that you panic sell and say, okay, that's 100% going to happen, but you understand that there's potential for some significant downside to happen that maybe wasn't there, a year ago or 2 years ago in the current market. And markets dynamics and these things can shift so suddenly, but you have to be careful that you're not getting swayed by the public and by emotions. You're getting swayed by sort of like the new economic data that's being presented. So I think that a lot of the news from yesterday or whatever was unsurprising. These things have been, are continuing to be priced in the market. I wait and see. Hopefully have faith that they make smart smart monetary decisions that help our country, and the global economy move forward. Clearly, dealing with inflation is a priority, significant priority. Thanks, John. Appreciate the kind words. Justin says, do you think when evolving skies, sorry, I haven't been putting these things up. I'll put them up. Do you think when evolving skies is reprinted, the Moonbryon VMAX alt will go down? I'm hearing people taking 50%, talking 50%, 80%. What are your thoughts? Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think the most likely scenario would probably be, but again, how long does it take for it to be opened? Who's opening it? Are companies, are sellers doing mass box breaks on these, or are they selling it to people who are keeping it sealed, or are those people opening it? How many are really going to hit the market will depend on the size of the reprint, all these types of things. I think it's also, there's a ton of evolving skies out there being opened every day. Like a lot of evolving skies is being opened every single day. So these cards are being opened every day. More are potentially going to come on the market. Of course, the majority of cards that are opened are probably never going to come on the market, or certainly aren't going to come right on the market. They're being opened by collectors who are really happy to open that card. But some percentage will. The more supply, the more demand you need to keep the prices up. So, just rationally, you'd think if suddenly there was a fairly large or fairly significant influx of supply that was actually put on the market, which, making it a less scarce, item at the moment, more supply on the market, it would theoretically drive the prices down. I also think that people move on to the next new cool hyped card, if there is one, or new set. And so I think that the more time that goes by, or the more new sets that are released, there's also more people who want it for their collection already have it. And then more people who, more are being opened, more people have what they want, and more people are kind of getting bored. So even people who like really wanted it at one point, at this point, they might be like, I'll wait, because there's a new card from the new set that I'd rather have, or I'd rather open some product, or it gives, more options. So now, how significant are each of those things? Like how much downward pressure are they going to put on this card? There's no way to know that. So you're just guessing. We're all just, you just be guessing by saying 50 to 80%. You can look at what, like, the Shining Charizard from Hidden Fates did, and you can say, well, here are examples of a card that went down like 80%, 70%. It also has to do with like the time period. And we don't know. I mean, we don't know how much room that card has left to push up to. There could just be more and more pressure. You could have someone buy out a bunch of it, take a big gamble or big wager on it, which, these cards don't have so many copies that if someone with a lot of money buys 100 or 200 or 300, that can really, prop up the market, at least temporarily. So that's just the markets that we're engaged in. Unpredictable. Let's see. Do you feel like gold stars are being overhyped the last few months? I see tons of sales post discussions about them lately. Yeah, I think that, I don't know about overhyped, but I think that gold stars, I've had lots of people ask me questions about gold stars, wanting to buy gold stars privately. The sales on gold stars have been really strong. We've had even some like record high prices for gold stars. People tend to like, stuff we talked about on this channel, right? People tend to flock towards like, they still want set cards, and these cards are fairly affordable, but they're afraid, not, it's very irrational, but they've seen like less rare stuff collapse in value, and this stuff hasn't gone down as much in value. So they say, oh, this stuff is safer. But in reality, actually, some of the WotC, some of the first edition WotC stuff, some of the stuff that's collapsed more is probably a better buy right now. Because it's now, maybe not, maybe the price is better now, these relative to that, but it just shows you the psychology. It's like, right, we were talking about on this channel, like, buy those cards. If you're going to buy anything in Pokemon, buy those types of cards. And we were talking about that, 8 months ago, because when the shift happened, people were going to flock towards rarity, reasonably. That's, some of what we're seeing around these, and just sort of a natural progression of like, people wanting to collect WotC, the original sets, then into like the gyms, then into, E series, and then into this era, people discovering new things, discovering cool things. Also, the gold stars are like, it's not an objective thing for me to say, but they're freaking cool, like I think, and they're really important cards within the hobby historically. They're important. They're always going to have a lot of demand and value, in my opinion, relative to other things. But I wouldn't say that they're like overvalued in any sort of significant way, but I also don't think that it's like, when those types of things are selling, when you can get 60% off of a card that you weren't willing to buy a few months ago, and you could pay the exact same price for the gold star as you were a few months ago, that shows where the market sentiment is and the potential mistakes people are making. But when that happens, as I said before, you have to decide like, what's really going on here. Is it that WotC was very overpriced before and gold stars have been correctly priced the whole time, or reasonably priced the whole time? And so gold stars are going to stick at this price, and maybe WotC now will stick at this price also? Or does some of this WotC stuff still have room to fall because it was way overpriced before relative to these? I was always, a proponent of some of the rarer WotC, right? Some of the E series, some of the Neos, some of the high rated stuff, like for sort of this moment, but, and the only thing again that worries me, like if the global economic market wasn't in a bad situation right now, I don't think we'd have anything to worry about the Pokemon market. I think it'd be real stable. I think we might even see a bump up, but it's when crypto falls 66%, 70%, and like a lot of people in Pokemon are also into crypto, like there's going to be a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic, a lot of doubting, a lot of worry that it's all going to go to zero and I should get cash. And, a lot of people who are selling their cards right now to buy stocks or buy crypto or, all these types of things, because they want to get there. They feel like those things are at a discount, et cetera, et cetera. So, so this is like, the skepticism to the brand. Yeah. I mean, sure. Like, they worked with the guy who, said the Logan Paul case was real, so it's all these companies can do better. I'm all for every one of these companies doing better. I just think I don't really know what it means. Like do you think that PSA, he's talking about PSA for people who just jumped in, authenticating fake cards, like, are they the only, all these companies are authenticating some fake cards and making these mistakes. I think it's a learning experience for them. And it sucks that people are faking and cheating and lying. Most of my irritation or frustration would be with the person. It wouldn't be with the grading companies getting duped, but they need to do a better job. But, I think that grading offers way too much to these hobbies for it to ever go away or die. It offers way too much collectible value, and PSA is at the top of the mountain, I think now and probably, for the foreseeable future. PSA or any other grading will try to find a solution for grading metal cards. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but you can maybe let me know again. Jake, is your investment strategy financial, not Pokemon, changed last month? So, my financial strategy does change. Pokemon and collectibles is definitely a part of my financial strategy, or my, what I do. I speculate on cards 100% to, but broadly speaking, not really. I think that, within Pokemon, you're not asking specifically about Pokemon here. Within Pokemon, I bought a lot more in December, January, and I built positions and things where I have positions and eras in certain cards that I feel good about, that I don't feel like I need to keep adding to them. And I'm sort of happy to let, like I set price targets and I bought a bunch at the price targets I felt comfortable with. When I go online now, the price targets that I set, the cards are not lower. Some of them are selling a little bit higher. Most of them are selling about the same right now. So other people have an option to buy at the price that I, bought at, that I think are good buys. And I'm comfortable with sort of, if they fall again, I might buy a little bit more, but I'm pretty comfortable with it. Globally, the global economic situation has worsened. The stock market, all these types of things have worsened in the last, 6 months. So because there's more risk now, I'm going to be more cautious, and I'm going to want to keep more cash than I did before, so that if things get really bad, then I have cash to sort of take advantage of that. That's it. Otherwise, it's the exact same strategy. I tend to be mostly invested in things all the time. I'm not someone who keeps cash, really, very much cash at all. But I invest in a range of things. But the biggest things I invest in are stocks, number one, and then two, it's collectibles. But it's a wide variety of collectibles that I feel like I'm, engaged enough in all these markets that I personally am willing to sort of take the risk. I don't know if there's anything else I can say about it. It's really that main thing. It's, I'm still budgeting. I'm still doing the same type of stuff. I'm still investing a certain amount each month in the best things. I'm just investing slightly less, and I'm keeping a little bit more cash reserves. To avoid fear and greed, don't build a strategy that relies on timing the market. Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to rely the fundamental, in my opinion, as a value investor, my fundamental strategy is buying really good things that I think in 5, 10, 15, 20 years will be more valuable, right? Really good company, whatever it is. Okay. That's where I'm going to make most of my money theoretically, or most of my gains is just time in the market. Right now, in a collectibles market, in highly volatile markets, and in markets that where you're very engaged in them, I think that you can also try to time the market to some extent. I mean, you can, when you get in, can matter, right? Now it's you don't want to again, your primary strategy is just getting into stuff that you think will be good at whatever price it is today. Buy whatever it is today, hold it for 15 years because you think that company, you think whatever that asset is going to appreciate over that time. That's the bread and butter, because people are undervaluing it right now, undervaluing its potential, whatever. But the second thing you are doing is you're taking a look and you're saying, wow, there's a lot of anxiety or fear or negativity towards something you see, or a lack in the collectibles world. There's often a lack of knowledge, lack of experience, lack of awareness. So there are things I'm buying right now that nobody talks about, no influencers talk about, people aren't as aware of. Those are the types of things that I think have, more sort of potential upside than some of the already discovered things. You can get into trouble with those things because sometimes they're undiscovered for a reason. So, there's going to be more risk in buying things that are less foundational to the Pokemon hobby or to any of these hobbies. But I'm always trying to time markets to some extent, but I only would ever deviate from my sort of normal buying and selling patterns, which are pretty gradual and pretty stable. If there are intense swings in the market or my outlook intensely changes. So if my outlook gets really positive, I will put a lot more money and I'll be extremely bullish in buying. And if my outlook gets extremely negative for a short period, I will increase the amount I sell. But I'm never going to be someone who's going to sell everything of something. I mean, even in Pokemon, I did field some offers to just sell my entire collection at around the top, because I had such a strong conviction that we were in a mania. And I've honestly never had that strong of a conviction. I had a stronger conviction that we were in a mania than I had when I was buying this stuff. I had more doubt in myself when I was buying all of it at $25, $15, $30, a lot of these items. I had more conviction when I was, to sell it at that type than I did even at the bottom. But I decided that just seemed overly aggressive and rash. And I really love this stuff and like this stuff. And I have enough confidence in the long term of the market that I tucked myself into only selling, 30% roughly. Now, the stuff that I held has done pretty, is only down mostly I'm probably down entirely on my whole collection, maybe 30% or so, which is really good, which is a humongous loss, but that's, I feel good about that, and I don't feel terrible about the stuff that I'm still holding, and I'm still selling a little bit to get cash, but I'm putting all that money back into things, back into these markets. I think these markets will do well over time, but I also think that there's a chance that they won't. There's absolutely a decent chance that they won't. And because of that, I'm not putting all my money into these markets. I'm not putting money that I can't afford to lose. And at the end of the day, I'm a collector and really enjoy this stuff. And so that's always factored into, like, I'm willing to lose more in this than I would ever be willing to lose in the stock market or crypto or something that I don't have emotional attachment to. I don't care about as much. So that's where I'm at, in my thinking, to answer George Bot's question. And Alpha Hoarder, is definitely right here, generally speaking, in having sort of a long-term strategy in whatever you're investing, and trying not to get too caught up in overreacting to any one given piece of news, and then trying to time some sort of big shift. Let's see what we got here. Let's start. We have some questions here. Do you think mid-grade slabs like PSA 5 to 7 will hold a premium over raw values in the future? No idea. So I think that a lot of people, like, I've heard people make videos saying that, like, only 10s should have value, or like only 9s, or these types of things. And, like, that's clearly not the reality in other more established markets where there's a lot more demand and maybe less supply. So at the end of the day, the answer to your question here is it's all about demand and the supply. So right, obviously. So, but the supply of these, we don't know. Like, it depends what card you're talking about here, right? I mean, we could talk about trophies, 5s and 7s, and we could say, well, these probably hold a very large premium over sort of a raw copy because it's been authenticated. You at least know, like, if I'm going to spend tons and tons of money, I want it to be authenticated unless it's from a really reputable person. And I want to know that it's a 5 to 7, rather than, like, it could have some terrible damage that I don't even know about on a picture or something like that. Like, I would feel more comfortable buying it slabbed. But when we get into, like, cheaper stuff and stuff that is mostly really good condition, I'd much rather buy, I mean, at the other extreme, let's talk about, like, a Charizard promo or something from a tin or from an ETB, like a Champion's Path. Like, would you rather buy a PSA 5 to 7, or would you rather buy one that's in the plastic, that's, like, very likely a 9 or 10? Are you paying for the plastic then? And how much is the plastic, right? So, and there's going to be all sorts of examples in between. I think in the long term, if we want to think about, like, let's think about WotC first edition hollows or something like that. Let's talk about base set first edition. Obviously, there's some value, in 5 to 7s. Sometimes the 5 to 7s sell higher than their raw counterparts. Sometimes the raw sell higher. I think it can kind of go back and forth. I think in the long run, particularly if there are more fakes, or there are more and more people who really want these, and more of these things disappear, and the raw ones left get worse and worse quality, generally speaking, because more and more of, like, even ones that are in this condition are graded. I think that the graded ones may end up having a premium. But it's not it's sort of that long-term supply and demand question of whether 5s and to 7s will ever be valuable, will ever be worth grading. On cards, like, let's take, like, first edition jungle hollows or something like that. Like, are 5 to 7s really, and then if you want to go extreme, like unlimited base set hollow, like, will there ever be a time in the hobby where it's so big that 5 to 7 unlimited hollows are, like, worth grading and worth buying? We were in a time this year where a lot of people graded them. We're talking really outside, like, maybe the Charizard Blastoise, where, like, a lot of people were grading them. A lot of people made a lot of money grading Charizards, but there's so many of those cards that were printed, and a lot of childhood collections and all sorts of things survive. 7's pretty strong, but, like, when you start getting to, like, 5 is, like, real beat up and still sort of get fives. So I don't know. Hopefully that rant helped. As far as like what the market will do, like in terms of what you should do, the market has always up to this point. There are times when, like, let's take nines for example, because those are the ones that probably sell the most and make the most sense for this. People would buy like mint raw nines for over the price of graded nines because they were like hoping to get tens or something maybe, or they just wanted a mint raw copy and they didn't want to crack it from the case. I don't really know what the thinking was, or they just didn't realize or know what was happening. In those times, there's really good value in buying the PSA 9s, but the reverse can happen too, where if the PSA 9s start becoming extremely expensive but they're mint in modern, this happens a lot, right? Like PSA 10s are way overpriced often in modern, and because you can get a card that has a really good chance at a 10 for like less than half the price, or like a fifth the price or sixth the price. Like, so if we get to a point where fives and sevens, because Pokemon has exploded so much and there's so much more demand, where fives and sevens get in the same situation, then you might see the same type of thing happening, where they're going to be times when the raw, makes sense or is better value, and then times when the graded. So, Gecko says, do you think the Pokemon Company will adjust their utilization of print capacity as the hobby goes back to normal, or they will keep printing hard, similar to early S&M where too much was printed? Do I think? I have no idea. I don't really speculate on like exact. I mean, if we have to guess, we think the Pokemon Company is going to do like what they're going to try to find a balance. And I think the Pokemon has done a really good job. I trust the Pokemon card company, frankly, over like any other card company. I just think they're doing a great job in terms of general print runs and trying to get the price of their modern boxes at a certain point. Some sets are obviously going to get overprinted because they're going to be sort of caught in where there's like a really high demand period, like Battle Styles, Chilling Reign, like those might be examples of where Pokemon should have printed less. But you have to understand, it was coming out of like the Vivid Voltage era, where like everyone was like yelling at the Pokemon Company at each other, and people were beating each other up at stores to try and scalp like, those elite trainer boxes, right? So it's extremely understandable why they were like, we're going to put an end to that, and we're going to print way more than we did before. And then maybe now they're gonna, the next few sets, maybe they print a little bit less. They're probably gonna test the waters, So that's what I would say. I have faith in them. I don't think we have to worry too much. I mean, they'll make mistakes. Every company makes mistakes, but I just think they do as well as you can do. Basically, it's part of why I have faith in this market to some degree, is that I just think the Pokemon Company does a really good job of protecting the IP and advertising it and growing it. And, I mean, of course I wish we had more like cool English promos and they catered a little bit more to like the North American market or the English speaking market more broadly. But there are things like that. But like overall, I think the Pokemon Company is just solid. Brevity Gaming, TCGs and Gaming says, Jake, you've said price point is everything. So, let me put it on. Such as baby shinies for $100. So my question, what would that price be for EX stamped reverse hollows? I like buying near mint for under $5. Yeah, what would my price be? So it's obviously gonna depend on which Pokemon we're talking about and which set we're talking about. And honestly, the coolness of the art. Like, I'm going to pay $1 more, $2 more, even if the Pokemon isn't that much cooler, but I think the art's really cool. Or it's from like a set that's more popular, like Team Rocket Returns or Deoxys or something. So I can't really give you like, there's no one price. It's the same thing with baby shinies. Like there was a range, right, of even, of what I would have paid, depending on which baby shiny and depending on which set, But yeah, I mean, the more illiquid an item is, the more low dollar an item is like this, the more of a deal I want to get. and I want to know that I can like flip and resell that item for probably at least like double the gain if we're talking about like $2, $3, $1, $2, $3 cards. If we're talking about like financially. Now, as far as like a collector, do I think there's great value in buying a bunch of like reverse hollows for like near mint for binders for like under $5 if you can afford it? 100%. I'm not sure it's like the best financial like spec play because the like liquidity, issues, and then also like how near mint, right? I mean, are these cards that you can grade? Because right now, I mean, these cards, like you can buy nines of most of depending on the Pokemon, but a lot of these cards you can buy nines, CGC 8s, 8.5s for like already graded for like $15, $16. So, I think if you're getting the same condition one, buying it raw for like under 5 makes sense. But if it's like a worse condition, I'm not sure it does make sense. Because remember the grading fee. I mean, the grading fee right now is like $30 and $12 respectively for the two companies. But with the grading fee will probably come down. But let's say the grading fee sits at around $15 or $10. If it really does get to $10, that would change it. But $15 for a long time, that's a big fee to potentially grade these. And then how well will these actually sell ungraded? How well will they sell even graded because of how niche they are? These are all questions that pose some risk. I really like these. I think that they're undervalued. I think that there's great value in them, but I don't feel like really confident that the market does or will. So as a business, I'm not going to be like super aggressive, but I picked up a number of graded ones and I picked up some raw ones. So I've done some of this, particularly again, price points, everything, like when I can get a bunch of them at like a really good value. If I can get a bunch of them at $1, $1.50 in a larger lot, if I can get Japanese at like 50 cents, 75 cents a dollar, like that, that's more desirable because I think even if I sell them raw immediately or sell them at collecticons or heck, sell them to Nick, who lives near me, who I just sold him a bunch of raw cards. And then he's going to go into Whatnot and sell them individually and do the work of selling them individually. And, there's plenty of profit for me to make. There'd be profit for him to make, so it's that sort of thing. But we don't know how long that profit's going to be there. We don't know how deep it is. So there's risk. So it also depends how many you're buying and how many doubles or duplicates or, the more you buy, like, for example, like I'm not buying any more baby shinies. I haven't for 2 months now or so, or a month and a half, I think, unless it's like a really great deal. Like it's had to get an even better deal now. And because I'm more bearish now on the overall market than I was a few months ago. Bearish is a little bit of the wrong word. I'm more concerned because of the global economic. I think the Pokemon market's in a really good place, but I think it can be impacted by the global economic situation and by people losing their jobs and just having more increased fear. So hopefully that's helpful to just sort of get that mindset, how I think about these things. And then as always, it really depends on your specific financial situation and then how much of a collector you are versus like a reseller versus a long-term speculator. Definitely possible. Definitely possible. Hey, Jake, you mentioned that you collect other TCGs. Have you picked up any of the Bandai Miracle Cardass cards? Mainly as a collector rather than an investor. Lots of cool cards and fairly cheap. I have not. I'm not sure what those are. Maybe I haven't. I don't even know the name. Miracle Bandai Cardass cards. Is this Pokemon or the Miracle? I'm not so sure about. I haven't heard that description before. Maybe below you can say exactly what those are, or like what TCG or CCG. Because you've said other TCGs, I'm assuming it's non-Pokemon, and I haven't heard. Like I think I would for the Bandai Cardass would have known. Is Miracle a TCG? I've never heard of it. I do collect like One Piece, DBZ, Bandai stuff, Yu-Gi-Oh. So it's possible that's the name or the nickname for one of those, and I just don't know. My own definition. This is about the near mint question from a little bit ago. is almost, yeah. I mean, I think that it's also like hard to find those. So, so I mean, that makes it, if you can find them, to pick up some more, but it's also hard to tell like what the condition really is online. And, I mean, if someone says things like pack fresh, I open these myself, but it's just those lots used to be very prevalent. They just don't really, I don't see them, so let's see. So JB1 says, I think that all gold stars will be majorly expensive and hard to find in 10 to 20 years. I think if Pokemon does well, you will be definitely right. I mean, I think even lower grade, middle grade stuff could be very hard to find. I think the optimistic case for Pokemon is that we haven't seen anything yet, and that the fact that we are spoiled by like 9s and 10s even coming up on the market. Like those could be like, big events when reasonably big events when a 9 or 10 comes on the market. Now it's like they're a big event maybe with like when 15 or 20 or a complete set of 9s or 10s comes on the market. So how do you evaluate your buyback rate on an item, and when to keep something and sell something? When has an item appreciated too much to keep it? So I want to plug Dan's video here on this. It's a good video, and I watched it, and Dan and I think very similarly on a lot of this stuff. I'm a little bit, actually, that's not really true because it really depends on the thing. There's a lot of factors. So, you can have basic rules like when it doubles, I'm going to sell it. But the reality is that it completely depends on the card, and it completely depends on the market conditions. So the rarer the item, the less likely I feel like I can get it back, and the more undervalued I think it was to begin with, the less likely I'm going to sell it as it goes up. And so if an item like that doubles or triples, I may still say, yeah, well, of course it did. That's, and I still think it's way undervalued at the current price. I'm obviously not going to sell it at that price. In fact, I might be buying more, continuously buying that. So I have no problem paying an all-time high price or a near all-time high price for items that I think are that category. Now, there are extremely few items that are that category for me. There were way, way more a few years ago, but we have to live in the present now. Within Pokemon, there's not that many. Now, in other hobbies, like I just paid $250 for something that someone bought for $90. So they got it for $90 like 3 months ago, and I paid $250 for it in another hobby because I think that it's way undervalued, and I didn't know about it, a few months ago, and I'm in tune with sort of the market dynamics and what's happening and the influencers and all sorts of things. So, and I bring that up in the context of this question because all of that matters when you're thinking about like, when I think about a card, if I think the card's really undervalued, maybe I don't want to sell it until it's tripled or quadrupled, now items that I don't think are that great that I have, or that I just got for really good value, I'll be much more likely to either sell them immediately, or, take very low profit because I don't really think the item's that great. I think more supply is going to hit the market, and I can get that item back, so if I can continuously buy that item all the time, I'm happy to make 5-10% on it all the time because that's just constant, flow of that. Right. And, so Dan talked about that a good amount in his video about, breaking down, I think he broke down like UPCs and why he sold a certain percentage of it at what price. Part of it was because he got in at such a low price and he had a bunch of them. And if they're reprints, he talked about, he can get more from his distributor at a really low amount, which is a hedges the risk against, the reprint then lowering the prices on the ones that he's still keeping. The other thing he mentioned, which is really important, is cash flow. So I sell mostly when I need cash flow for bigger, better, newer item, whatever items that I want. And so when I get in that sort of position, I'll take a look at what I have and I'll say, okay, these things have appreciated this much, or maybe I've lost a little on that, but I don't think the item's that great, or I don't really like it that much, and I'll sell there, so that I can get, capital to put it over there. Now, I think that being aware of all the numbers and being number driven and data driven is definitely something that happens for me. So if an item has gone up 6 times in value, and I think that item, there's going to be more supply on the market, and I think I could get that item back pretty easily, maybe in a few months at a much lower price, i.e., base set unlimited hollows. I sold tons of base set unlimited hollows at the hype and then rebought a bunch of them. 8 months later at 90% discount of what I sold, 80% discount of what I sold. And, we talked, right? Timing the market's very difficult. Part of that's luck. Like, I could have sold 3 months earlier, and then I would have only I would have missed another double up that happened. I just happened to get lucky. And maybe it's also I'm super engaged. And so I am good at timing this market because I am so in it. But you can really deceive yourself by that sort of kind of BS, your sort of emotional intuition of being able to time things. Like, I think probably there's something there that the more engaged you are in a market and the smaller that market is and the more connected you are to like a lot of the forces that drive the market, and like the more you're going to be able to have some decent instincts about that sort of thing. But you can get a little funny there. That's not a good long-term strategy. But generally speaking, right, it was I could have sold 3 months earlier. I could have bought back, and I could have bought back a little bit earlier, and then I still would have made some profit, or I would have been able to take some profit out of the hobby and still own the same card, is a more accurate way to put it. But it's all part of it's fun, right? It's fun to do all of that. It's fun to predict and try to do these things. I don't have, to your question, I don't, and hopefully I illustrated it in my answer there. I don't have one specific, it goes up 50% and I sell it no matter what. I don't think that makes a lot of sense, but I do think that a certain type of item, every time it goes up 50%, I might sell it. Like, for example, like modern stuff, like anything Sword and Shield that I own, if I can make like 10%, 15% on it, gone, unless it's like something really exclusive, gone. So, I mean, to be honest with you, I would have sold more of the UPCs than Dan did. And I would have made less money on them than Dan has by holding them. Now, he isn't selling them, but the UPC, to be fair, is like such a good item because the amount of demand for it, the hype around it, the influencers talking about it, and the metal cards, and the fact that they so underprinted it for like just the regular demand. I would have been way more afraid of reprints than a lot of people were. And so far, my fear would have caused me, which I think is rational. We call it fear, but I think in this case, like I put in risk into it, would have made me sell those, would have made me take, 2 times, 3 times on my money. Same thing with those Evolutions booster boxes. Like, I sold at like $400, like I didn't ride them up to 1,000 like some people did. So, that's going to happen where you're going to sell 3 months early, these types of things. But like, what's good is that you're at the right side of it always. So you're buying it at that $80 and you're flipping it at that 160. And even if it goes to 320, that's good, man. You did good. And if you can continue to identify things and continue to do that, that's a much better system than trying to like hit home runs and then hold those items. I mean, the huge mistake, right, that tons of people did on Evolutions was that, I mean, a lot of the people I talked to a lot of people bought Evolutions at $1,000 or $1,200, thinking very confidently that it would go to 2,000, 4,000. And probably a lot of the same people who bought that, frankly, bought it at 400 with the same mentality. And just the people at 400 happened to be right, and the people at 1,000 happened to be wrong. But it was the same type of what I think was pretty risky gambling sort of thinking. Now, better obviously to buy it at 400 because the market can, in order for it to move to 1,000, that's much easier than for it to move to 1,000 to 2,000. I mean, we're getting into billions and billions of dollars that would, that potentially, now maybe not because again, only like 50 probably have to sell at that new high price, and maybe no one else will be willing to, to list it for anything lower. So you don't actually have to inject you don't actually have to have like $10 million of sales to maybe move the price on that. But it's I don't know. Hopefully that ramble and rant's helpful just for people to sort of hear the way that I think about these things. And I'm looking to be that guy. Like I'll hit some perfectly, like unlimited bit. Like there'll be some times when I like hit it exactly right, but for the most part, you just want to be at the right side of both of those things and buying like roughly in the right time. It's why I started buying 3 months ago, right? Because I felt like at this point we're good enough. It's good enough. This market's low enough. There's enough negativity that I'm going to start buying things that I think are really good and really underpriced. And I'm going to wait for deals, and I'm going to try to buy the really low auctions and steals, not paying market. But I'm going to start doing that again. And the market may end up going down 30, 40 more percent. I might be wrong about that, but I think I'll be right in a few years, and I think I'll be on the right side of things. If I am on the wrong side of things, that's possible too. That's definitely possible. Nothing is guaranteed in pop culture collectibles like this for sure. And I hedge that by not putting that much money in it, and by putting money in, traditional investments and my stock portfolio. And so, all right. Hey, Jake, I've heard people have bricks of some of the WotC Blackstar promos. I'm interested in the Chris Rush Mewtwo. Have you heard of bricks of that promo? There are bricks of these promos. I've seen them myself. I don't know how many people have lots of bricks of them, but you just got to be careful. In terms of like the Christopher Rush Mewtwo specifically, for anyone who doesn't know, that's the legendary collection art, but originally it's a Blackstar promo. I can't remember if I've seen that one specifically. Maybe not that one. If Dan is here, he'll let you know, or someone else, if anyone's seen bricks of those, or maybe I did see bricks and I forget. I saw lots and lots of bricks of promos recently at someone's house. Let's see. Yash, what do you think about the speculation around the acquisition of Millennium? If you haven't heard, people think that they did it so it's more affordable to do restricted and fast-acting reprints. Yeah, possible. I think also it's that they can probably just act quicker one way or the other. So like if they need to print more, they can do it, more quickly. Maybe they also don't have to put their orders in so far in advance. They can actually make their decisions a little bit closer to the time period, so that in a fast acting market where demand is maybe greatly increasing or then greatly restricting, diminishing, they can more accurately print the amount that they should print. It's a good thing that they did this. Like, it's a good thing. Like Pokemon having more control and being able to more intelligently sort of like, map out their print runs is a good thing for us. I do think that the Pokemon cares about the secondary market. They're not looking to stonk your product, but they want it to be healthy. They want it to be collectible. They don't want so much of it to be out there that it's not fun to open up and chase stuff. I think that they care about collectors. That's why they've added inserts over the years, and they've made Hidden Fates and some of these like super collector sets. They don't just care about players, though they definitely care about players too. What do you think about the SM Blackstar promos? I feel like there are many good artwork cards, and they're unique compared to other era promos. This is not an area that I feel like I'm super knowledgeable in. I've never been as I've never been as interested in promos as I've been in set cards, unless the promos like really feel unique and speak to me. I don't know if that's like right or wrong. It's not like investment ideas or like financial ideas. It's just um, personal opinion, personal appreciation. I will say Rafi, um, who's my friend who started this channel with me ways back. He loves promos, and we used to talk about how like he really likes the promos. He really likes the S&M promos actually. Um, so. Question: if you had to give up your entire collection and leave the hobby for a once in a lifetime experience, what would it be? Oh man, I don't know. Not sure there'd be like one experience that would be worth, obvious like an experience that would like saved the life of a loved one, or like, but there's no like fun one experience that'd be worth. I couldn't think of one. I'm not super into like one insane experience and sacrifice a huge amount for one insane experience. It's not really my my makeup. I'm more sort of I like consistency and you know building meaningful things over time. Like I find more value in life and in things when I'm actively engaged in doing something that lasts a really long time, rather than like one time like, oh my god, I'm gonna go have like dinner with like a celebrity. That's like, I mean, that'd be sweet and it'd be fun, but like it's not something that like is important to me as like my business or like my family, like building relationships or something more like long term. What do you think will happen to the market when these whales are retiring and therefore sell off their stuff? People like Old School said he would sell when he got too old. Yeah, that's a long time from now. It'll depend on like, are there new collectors? Are there multiple generations of collectors? Like, but if it's just our era, collecting really in serious collectors, then it will, the market will probably be really small by then, and it will make it even smaller. It'll die out. Alpha Hoarder question: I ask an MTG a lot, but in Pokemon, do you see younger/newer participants in the hobby gravitating to the old/original stuff that predates them, or do they have their own nostalgic baseline? I think both. I think that they're both really into the new stuff, and the old stuff often is really cool. Depends if they have like adults or people teaching them about it. But like in my family, kids I've worked with professionally, you know, and then looking at what happened to me, right? Like, because I collected like sports cards and when I was really young, and I went back and I wanted to own the cards I had when I was a kid. I.e., kids today will want to own Sword and Shield or whatever they're opening up. But the stuff that I was really willing to pay a high amount for when I became like more serious into it or super engaged was like rookies of players like Larry Bird or like legends before I was even collecting, cards that I never knew existed or I couldn't afford when I was a kid. I might have known existed, but I just couldn't afford. So I think that pattern will, there's always going to be like it's like a gene, whatever in people. There are people who love to collect. They love to chase that sort of thing, that feeling, that the hard to find physical items. They enjoy that. They get pleasure from that. And they're always going to go to the hardest to find, the rarest, the most expensive. And often that stuff is the oldest. Not all the time, right? I mean, we have middle generation stuff. We have modern trophy cards. We have modern promos that might be harder to find, harder to come across, certainly than, unlimited base would be or something like that, or even first edition base maybe. But, generally speaking, the old rare stuff, the stuff that got beat up the most, the stuff that wasn't kept in good condition, particularly if it was also short printed, in Magic, obviously Alpha, is so much shorter printed than anything else, Beta being the second, so on and so on. In Pokemon, it's a little bit different. First edition base and certainly unlimited base is definitely, there's a lot more unlimited base than there is, first edition or even unlimited, let's say unlimited E series or Diamond and Pearl era stuff or even probably, certainly I think black and white stuff as well. So. What are your thoughts on the Ponchi Pikachus? Most graded 10 and the pops are pretty high. The Charizard one sells around 2K in a 10. I think the price is high. I wouldn't buy them at that. I think that there are cooler, nicher stuff that I enjoy more, that I think is more undiscovered, that's considerably rare, but it's demand and they're really cool. Like I have one set. I sold all my extras of all of the Ponchu stuff because for that very reason. But as a collector, I don't sell my collector pieces unless I think the price is like outrageous and unless I think I can definitely buy it for cheaper somewhere in the future. These I'm not convinced I'll be able to buy for cheaper, so much cheaper. I think that popularity is just so huge on these. People like these better than I do, obviously, because the prices that they're willing to pay, and that's why I sold all my extras. So that's full transparency on something like that. But if I needed the money and I had to sell parts of my personal collection, these would be something that would go way before, some of my like trophies or some more important set cards to me, just speaking personally. But that subjective demand piece, that's huge, right? And these have just epic demand. People love these. People think they're so cute. The screams, oh my god, the screams have so much demand. People just like people have never even seen them before go right to them. That's the reality. I mean, I really like these cards, by the way. They're freaking cool. Like I don't look at these cards and think like, what do people see in these? Like they're great cards. As soon as I saw them, I bought a bunch of copies, to speculate on. Same with the screams. It's just that they've gone up so much that I don't think the analogy of the celebration CCP is similar to any normal person in the hobby. Catchmall got all his distribution pricing, and a normal person was lucky to find one at the store. So so I'm not really sure exactly what you're saying here outside of like, I mean, the analogy or what Dan is trying to teach people or show people is why he was willing to sell so many at lower prices and why he's willing to hold them higher, which is useful for people to hear. Now, you are not in that same situation, right? So I agree with you. The vast majority of people aren't able to get them so cheaply, so they're going to have a different formulation. So I'm not sure it's an analogy. And I think the usefulness is to understand why a business does what they do. If you're fortunate enough to get distribution, you can do that too. If you can't, then you have to shift your strategy. So, I mean, I can talk specifically about like if I bought them at $200 because I thought they were a good speculation play, I would probably be more, and I couldn't get new ones if they were reprinted. I would be more aggressive, and I would probably sell all of them or almost all of them now, and put it into stuff that I think has higher, stuff that like singles where I can buy like well below, but I can buy like to below market and then just move it, to Nick or to other people, rather than having like a UPC sort of sit there and maybe go up like more. But again, it has to go up. Like I have to pay fees on this. Like it's not. It's an item that I can do a lot with the cash, with the money. So, and again, because I can't get more of them, if there is a reprint, it would make me more want to sell all of them or almost all of them personally. But you have to understand that if you sell all of them, they could go to 1,000. And that's part of what you're. It's not. That's not me saying it's going to go down or me saying it couldn't continue to go up. I think that it could. It's just understanding, what your sort of goals are, what your sort of expertise is. I think for a lot of people, they don't have the same interest as me in singles, in graded, in playing that game or being engaged in that market. And so something like that, if it's really fun, they love to put it up in the background, it makes them happy, and it has decent potential enough to continue to go up, that's a completely different situation. So that's why it's useful, I think, for people to hear and understand why Dan does what he does. And I mean, honestly, guys, like Dan's channel's unbelievable. Like the fact that his channel is so small shows how people, this isn't an insult to the community, because I think it makes sense. So let me phrase this in a non-negative way, because I think it isn't negative. I think most people are not actually interested in selling and are not actually interested in the market analysis and the details. They're more interested in sort of a 12-minute video that's by someone sort of like entertaining with music, or who has like a little bit more like, sorry, Dan, but a little bit more like energy and, and, that sort of thing. And it's going to make some more like interesting claims, maybe a little bit more, claims that get the fire going. I think more people are interested in that than actually learning how to do what Dan is doing. Dan is literally going through exactly what he does. Now, Dan and I don't agree on everything, and I'm more of a speculator investor, I think, than Dan. And I think about things a little bit differently in the long run, in the long term of this hobby and other hobbies. But Dan is, first of all, Dan's really smart, really smart guy, real honest, real transparent, is showing you exactly what he's doing. And he's been very successful and continues to be successful. So it's sort of like free, like nothing else. There's like, I don't think there are any channels like Dan, like Nick, I think does some of that, but I mean, Dan's spreadsheets and going through the numbers of exactly what he's doing for the amount that he's doing is, for people who actually care and actually want to know, is huge. Now, I think, the philosophy and the ideas and the concepts are also valuable. And I think there are a number of channels who deal more in that, but, so that's what I would say. Give Dan's channel a little bit of a plug. Obviously he's my Patreon partner and like my close friend. So, I'm biased, but I think we know, something, but a video like that getting 800 views, and then you have a video, by someone else getting 40,000 saying the market's down and things might go back up, and that's all they've said. It's like one has like tremendous like actual applicable value in starting a business. One is a lighter entertainment piece, but that just shows you that most people are just interested in that, which actually makes perfect sense. I mean, how many, in any hobby, in any sort of thing, there's only going to be a small percentage of people who want to actually do the work to learn how to do something. And the rest just sort of want to be entertained and have more surface knowledge. And I don't think that, I think that that's just normal, and shows that for most people, this is like a chill, relaxed hobby, and they don't want that boring number analysis, I think the danger is when you think you're getting like in-depth expert analysis, and so you're putting a lot of money, but you're not actually willing to do the work to actually learn how to do it, or like to really know what's going on. You're not actually selling. You're not actually like that's the danger. So you put a lot of money and you have a lot of bullishness, and maybe you have a lot of ego and confidence, but you're not actually willing to like do the work to learn how to do it effectively, and watch the type of content that's going to like Dan's content that's going to like show you his thinking. All right. Enough of a plug for him. Jake, tell me what you think about the ETB reprint, and would you get any for 50? I didn't buy any. There's just a lot of other plays. There's a lot of other places that I prefer right now. But when something like Vivid Voltage is reprinted, I think Vivid Voltage is a good set. I'm a little concerned that it doesn't have like the alt arts, and I feel like the alt arts might be the thing from this generation. And but it introduced the amazing rares which people love. It has the Pikachu, which has some value. I don't like. I really think that the rainbow rares from Sun and Moon are more important to Sun and Moon, and that Sword and Shield is more about the alt arts for me. So I would really go heavier, focus more on the alt art sets with the best alt arts personally, as the best sets are the most important sets from this era. But it's a good set, fun set to open. There's a lot of it though. It's not like oh my gosh, like that's a must buy, but I definitely don't look at that. I'm much, obviously, I bought some of like the Sun and Moon base reprinted set, when that ATB got reprinted. That was a little bit more interesting to me to pick up than the Vivid Voltage. But both aren't like that interesting. Like I'm not putting thousands of dollars into either personally. It's also, though, it's not my thing. It's not what I'm passionate about. It's not, I can't, like, my experience isn't really that valuable there, right? My experience or speculation or plays, like, not only is it not as much fun, but I'm not going to get as much of, anyone can make that play. It's not, there are very few people who know what I know right now about some of the niche stuff I'm collecting in other hobbies. I'm very convinced of that. And when I show it to people who are very knowledgeable in these hobbies, they've never seen it and they're like, "Oh my God, that's an amazing." Like that type of stuff. I'm more into, than something like this, but not a good set, solid set, and not a ridiculous price. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. Like, I think what was so unique about the UPC is the demand was so intense and they so underprinted it that when that happens, the secondary price is gotta be so much higher. Like, when you feel that, unless there's a reprint, like, as a seller, you're gonna hold that item as long as possible, and you're gonna want more for it because you know how many people are waiting in line to get them. You know how difficult it was to get. And the UPC singularly is that item from this year, in my opinion. It was the most obvious item to go up. It was with just the intensity, the hype around it. And I mean, every person I talked to, knew that who was getting them from distribution, and every person like Squeaks, like all these people, Dan, everyone knew that. Everyone held them, didn't want to sell them as quickly also. And all that worked together to drive the price up. Now, that is different than it continuing to go up from here. So when they like the price of that from Pokemon should have probably been $250 a box, given the limited amount they made and the amount, right? So like the immediate secondary market price probably should have been more around 250. So that's the thing about these things. Like, but does that mean it's an investment that it can continue to go up from here, that it's going to be opened up a lot and that people are going to continue to want it? Or is most of its growth sort of that immediate growth similar? You can see similar things on, is most of that growth sort of, if you like the people who could get it at that distribution or retail level because Pokemon didn't print nearly enough of it initially. That's the way I think about those types of products sometimes. But yeah, the hype, you're definitely right. The hype was crazy around those. Hey, Jake, thanks for all you do. I recently saw a video of 18 to 21-year-olds opening vintage WotC boxes. It was interesting watching them be passionate about vintage. It gives me hope. Any thoughts? Yeah. Just as someone said before, I think that, I mean, I don't think you have to worry. Don't that I don't have any real doubt. I mean, I just don't have any doubt about it. It just seems every other hobby follows that pattern. People want the oldest, rarest, scarcest stuff. It doesn't mean they're not. And again, people hear it as it needs to be one or the other. They're gonna want both, right? They're gonna want the childhood stuff and they're gonna want that stuff as long as they're interested and engaged in the hobby. They're gonna want both. Do you have any thoughts about the price gap between PSA 9s and 10s being smaller in sets like Neo Destiny first versus something like Jungle first? Is that true? That's interesting. So, I mean, generally speaking, the gap between 9s and 10s in prices is smaller when, from my experience, when it's much easier to get a PSA 10, the gap will be smaller because people are no longer paying outrageously high premiums for 10s when it's not that hard to get a 10, or when there's a lot of the 10s. So I would think that in sets, and specifically cards within sets that have the lowest 10s, you're going to see, which you should, the highest premium. You're going to see a 10x multiplier, a 12x, or even a 15x multiplier on on some of those 10s from the 9s, where sets like Jungle, there are going to be a few, I mean, there's some low pop cards, like some of your, the white cards like Snorlax and Wigglytuff, and, Porygon's pretty low. There are going to be some low, relatively low pops in there, but nothing like you're going to see. And maybe not so much Neo Destiny. There's some higher one. I mean, there are a few low ones, like the Shinings are fairly high. But if you go into like Neo Rev and Neo Discover, Neo Gen, there are cards that have like 9. If you go into like Expedition, there are cards that 9, 11, 12, 15, 10s into Aquapolis. So I would expect the 10s to get quite a bit of premium. Now, what is interesting is that it does trickle down to the 9s to some extent. So the 9s do get more of a premium than I think they should when the 10s get a really high premium, because people see a really high 10 price. So they say, well, the 9 should be more expensive than the next 9, even when there's like the same amount of 9s of that card than another card. I've always felt that way. So great examples like the Typhlosion, like the, from Neogen. I think the 9s are way overpriced, like crazy overpriced as compared to like, the Feraligatr 9 or the Meganium 9, or some of the other good 9s from that set. Just way overpriced card. Whereas like the 10, the value of the 10 makes a lot more sense because the 10 is actually rare. The 9's not that rare. Now people will say, well, but because the 10's so rare, like the 9 is your only option. But it's like there are the same amount of 9s and 10s of that card are there 9s and 10s of other cards when you add them both together. So it's actually equal rarity or difficulty to get a 9 or a 10. It's just only difficult to get a 10. But people don't think rationally. People just often just buy FOMO into things and buy what other people say is valuable. But over a long period of time, these things will matter, I think. And you're going to see rationality and reason sort of like prevail more and more over time. Beta says, do you feel like 2020 may have scorned a lot of would-be future collectors, referring to those who bought at the top and lost tons of money, maybe forever left a bad taste in their mouth of the hobby? I'm sure. I do think that most people who really love this and enjoy this, they'll be back at some point, maybe after a break, particularly if the market settles down and things get cheaper, or remain as cheap as they are now and just sort of settles and stabilizes. I think once it's a stable place, once you got a lot of like the hype influencer types out, it's a fun place to be with a lot of really nice, cool people who really enjoy being here. And I think that will bring people back once they get that sort of nasty taste out of their mouth. The collectors, the people who move from one thing to the next in sort of the card world or collectibles world, looking to kind of ride the hype wave to make money, may not be back, may only be back if it happens again. But of course, there are going to be some people who lost a ton of money, had a bad experience, and it's just going to leave such a bad taste in their mouth that they're never going to come back, or they have no interest in this anymore, or they were unable to develop an interest. Like they weren't able to like engage in like small communities like ours that are like that are valuable to people, who are in them. They weren't able to find one like that. There's so many, right? And there, even communities like where people open I'll shout like Pokeballer Mike, he's got a really nice guy, like has a wonderful like opening, like channel where he, generally opens and it's like they weren't able to find those people because they probably got like scammed or taken advantage of by like someone kind of crappy, Thoughts on the Asian 25th boxes that are POD? Any long-term potential? Thoughts? What's the Asian 25th box? Let me look that up, what that is. POD. I assume you're talking about the Celebration one, right? It's like the gold. Let me just make sure. Nothing came up for that. Not super engaged. in that market. Not super interested in them at the moment. I don't really have much valuable things to say about it, but thank you for the question. Sorry. Maybe I'll look it up more and can give a take in a future live. Some people going back and forth about investing in or collecting sealed product versus buying the card outright. Most YouTube viewers are only interested in cards they invested interest in, or I think that there's some truth in that, but I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people watch those channels because they're just lighter and easier to digest, and you don't need, like, if someone were to watch this channel and were not pretty like deep in the hobby, I would think they'd be like, what is going on? Like, what are they talking about with such confidence? It would just be a little bit, whereas if you watch, some of these bigger channels, it's much, they're much more geared to, and they're much easier access. I do think though, and I see this in the comment sections of some of these channels, like, people think that, like, they're deep, like they have a lot, like they really, like it, there's a lot, like they don't have a good self-awareness. That's the risk, is that there's an overconfidence in some of those communities, in my opinion. And that unfortunately then goes into sort of like overspending. What do you think about the theme deck exclusive hollows? There's some really cool arts that are regular rares in the set, but got a hollow version in a theme deck. Not sure exactly what you're talking about again. If you guys can give me like set names or years for things, that will help me, because you have to understand there's like so much stuff. Are you talking about like modern theme decks with like the stamped or staff cards? You're talking about Japanese, you're talking about English. SkippyFX says, I think people are underestimating the coming recession. Interest rates rising as the economy is slowing with high inflation. Layoffs are likely. Collections will be sold to buy groceries. I think some people are underestimating it. I think some people are overestimating, or are thinking it's guaranteed. So I would say there are people, in my opinion, on both sides, and everyone's going to have their own opinion. People who are super bearish think that everyone else is super bullish. People who are like somewhat in the middle think that like half people are bearish, half people are bullish, too bullish. People who are super bullish think that like everyone's crazy and is way too bearish and negative. So, and the people who are super bearish could end up being right. Like, now I don't know how I still think they're wrong, because I don't think there's enough data or information to be so confident. This is the difference between, like, hindsight may show that they were technically right, but I don't think their thinking is that good. Does that make sense? I'm not saying you're too bearish or anything, by this comment, because I think that there are plenty of people, I would agree with you. There are plenty of people who would agree with you are underestimating, the potential impact. The current stock market situation has proven your argument that the S&P 500 isn't always the best investment. Well, so of course, any market, like if you take certain time periods, not any market, but most markets that are somewhat established and have somewhat activity, if you take certain time periods, you could even take long time periods. You could take 5-year chunks of the stock market. You could maybe even take, maybe not much more than that, because historically it's just recovered so quickly. This could be a really long, we could be in a really bad recession, depression, where it takes 5 years, to recover. It could take 10 years. I mean, nobody really knows. Probably unlikely. But my point just being that, like, over the next 5 years, your modern booster boxes, and I said this to Alex, right, when he was on the channel, I was like, your modern booster boxes, in Pokemon could perform better than the S&P 500 over the next 5 years. Possible. How likely is it? I really don't know. Uh, the longer the time horizon you put out, the more I would disagree with that. And then it's the risk involved. It's the risk that's the thing. So, but anyone who's coming out saying that this market will always perform better within a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year window than this other market, unless one market is like completely dead and there's like no rational reason why it should be revived, which is not where the current Pokemon market is. It's not a very useful statement. Okay. So, but it's also not a very useful statement to say that modern Pokemon investing is better than investing in the S&P 500 long term. Whatever. We don't have to get into that whole discussion, and that it's less risky, or because the upside is better, or it's definitely like it's guaranteed that it's going to do better, or like any of those types of things that you might hear. I think very few people say that or think that. And I think most of the people who say that are just shilling their own product or shilling what they're doing. They don't actually believe that. But it is reasonable to say that it has the potential to outperform or do better, and the shorter the window, the more difficult it is to predict anything. But again, we could have a major correction in the S&P 500, a positive one, not, correcting the last few months. I mean, things could stabilize quickly and the Pokemon market could get quite a bit worse. So, diversification, understanding long-term risk, long-term goals. Super Bandai. So DBS is cool. For me, it's a little bit like every card just looks so amazing that or so shiny. It's almost like I don't know if they do a good enough job differentiating the inserts and the hits. That would be my one critique from a sort of like the way they built out the collectability of it. That new Vegeta, that's selling for $4,000 or $5,000. I don't think that's like much cooler than like cards that are selling for $1, $2 in terms of the way it looks, in terms of the feel of it. And I don't think that's smart way to build a collectability of a game. I think you really want to make your hardest to pull inserts like very different and very collectible, both in terms of their rarity, but also in terms of their look, in terms of the feel that they give. Now maybe I haven't seen that card in person. Maybe in person it has some extra layer of some sort of, shiny texture, something that's cooler than like some of the other shiny textured cards that are like $5. I'm not sure. But that would just be my one critique if it's true. But I'm not, as you can see, I'm not someone who's super engaged in it enough to really, to really know. I do like, personally, subjective, I like the signed cards from some of those first sets. Those are my favorite cards in the hobby. Those are the cards that I wish I had bought. I was going to buy them, and then I just waited because I was buying other things, and then they just took off, and they just took off before I could get there, and I'm just not willing to pay. There's just other things I prefer that, for those prices. But those would be the ones that I wish I had a set of. I would like both a binder set and like a PSA 10, PSA 9 set. Nope. I collect a ton of things. I collect a lot of non-TCG cards, stuff from 30s, 40s, 50s, stuff from the 1890s, war cards, different Disney, Mickey Mouse stuff, Superman, Batman, different pop culture phenomenon, Star Wars, Weiss, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball Z, Score, Harry Potter, Flesh and Blood, MetaZoo. As you can see in the background, I have Power Ranger stuff. I have Simpsons and Looney Tunes and lots of different WotC boxes. I have Lord of the Rings stuff. And then, so big collector, very interested in a lot of things. Marvel, another one that I collect a little bit of. Want to collect more, hoping prices will go down more in some of those PMGs. Maybe I'll pick up a few. I don't know. What Pokemon advice would you tell 20-year-old Jake? And what advice do you tell yourself right now about the Pokemon market in 2050? What I've told myself 10 years ago? Well, I wasn't in the hobby, or 15 years ago, or 13 years ago. I'm 33. Um, I'm an old man. I'm one of the older people, I think. What would I have said to myself at 20? Well, I wasn't in Pokemon then. I only got back into collecting Pokemon cards. I collected as a kid, but I only got back into it 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. 6 years ago now. So I don't know. I would have said like buy them, be in it. I mean, if I had been doing it seriously that whole time, I mean, obviously, I would have every single card. I'd have duplicates. I'd have multiples of every trophy. That's just the type of collector and person I am. And I didn't do it for other people. Like, so it wouldn't have mattered to me that it was a much smaller market and that people, and also like, I'm fine spending a lot of money on things that I feel confident in. I don't need someone to tell me that it's like investable or that, or, I have much more faith in sort of my analysis of like what other collectible markets have done and then trying to replicate that or try to predict that within the Pokemon world than I have of like a Pokemon influencer, telling me, who doesn't have much experience in any markets other than this one, telling me, what should I buy in this market, or Pokemon's never going to go up. There were all sorts of periods where a lot of people came out like saying Pokemon's going to die, Pokemon's going to die. Why are people even spending all that money? Like that would not have fazed me personally. So I think I would have, so it would have been great, but, I'm very lucky to have gotten in when I got in. I think people who come in now, hopefully, the market will continue to grow over time and people will feel like, I got in a really early, really fun early-ish time that this hobby has very long legs and we're sort of way towards the beginning of it being like pretty large. That's the hope. So, but, yeah. I don't know about, so that would just be like, hey man, like start buying this stuff. It's going to go up a lot and you're going to really like it. Like you're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to love doing this. And, if you start now, even slowly, but at that point, I was just like focused on like drinking and hanging out with people and, having just as much fun as possible. Like while I was in college, I wasn't even like, I guess when I was 20, I was starting to become like more academically focused. My last 2 years at college to kind of prepare myself more for a career. And I wanted to go to like a good grad school and all that sort of stuff. But before that, I was like just looking to have a good time, basically. School was more of like a hassle. So I wasn't serious about anything, including like probably collecting or anything like that. With Pokemon Go Lost Origins and ES reprints coming out at around the same time, are we going to see a dip in modern or other areas of the hobby like we did back towards the beginning of the year? With Pokemon Go Lost Origins, I don't know. Right? It's really a wait and see thing. I'm really not leaning one way or the other. Is the truth. Sorry about that. And I feel like I've kind of speculated enough in this live stream on sort of like why I'd be leaning one way or the other. I don't to go back into like global market stuff. We'll only know after the fact. We'll only know for sure. All right. I think I'm going to go for another 10, 15 minutes probably. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask them. And then we'll do this again probably in a few days. Maybe I'll bring on some guests next time. Thoughts on special delivery Bidoof cards? They're fine. I honestly don't follow the card. I don't know what it's priced at. It wasn't something that was like a huge thing I was going to stock up a lot on. It came out at a very hot time in Pokemon where everything was overpriced, in my opinion. If that had come out at a really low time in Pokemon, it might have been a card I bought a bunch of. That's probably the most true answer. But during that high point, I wasn't buying anything, including that card. If the Screams had come out during that period, which I was like, I thought they were just so good, and the Ponchu Pikachus, which I thought were so good, both of which I think are a lot better than that card personally, a lot better in terms of long-term potential of like standing out and connecting with people, just like instinctually when they see it. I just think that even those I probably would have passed on. Because, I mean, out of the gate, some of these cards were selling for like, and I don't remember exactly what that one's selling to. I know the delivery Pikachu, I think, what was that? Like 5,000 there were sales, 10,000 maybe there was a sale. I don't know, like in a PSA 10 or a Black Label or something. Just people are just nuts, just crazy amounts of money for a brand new promo card that nobody has any idea how many there are. Just a complete lack of understanding of the market. And I believe people were buying those as speculations. Now, did someone buy that because they bought out hundreds? I have all sorts of I think those markets could have been manipulated by someone. Who knows? I mean, you can get conspiracy tinfoil hat with it, and it's probably quite a bit more likely that this isn't true. But it's possible that someone with connections gets hundreds of them right out the gate, does one huge sale that they don't even have to pay necessarily for it to get recorded, but maybe they do pay it or between friends or whatever. This stuff happened all the time in the crypto world. And then you sell all the other ones at like $1,000, $800. And if that sale hadn't happened, you'd be selling them at like $200, $300. So it nets you a humongous gain. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the creature deck cards? Zard is consistently selling for 25K. In my eyes, this is a snapshot of what modern cards could attain if short printed like MetaZoo promos. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of these for the prices. It's just not my thing. It doesn't do it for me, but it definitely does it for a lot of people and a lot of people who've been collecting for a long time. So these are very popular. People like them. People are chasing them. My subjective not enjoying them is not, what other people are feeling and thinking. But because of that, it's definitely a pass for me, because the market values them much, much higher than I would value them at just because of rarity. It doesn't do it for me at those prices. But I agree with your point that, I mean, if modern Pokemon, if you had some modern chase cards, full arts, different sorts of things, super rare ones, they're all going to be very, very expensive unless they oversaturated it and overdid it. Has anyone ever reholdered a card because it's really loose inside the slab? So don't shake it too hard. It can do some damage over time, but it's unlikely to do any significant damage. But I feel the same way. It bothers me and hates it. I know Pat Flynn did a funny video, with the Slab Shaker 2000 or something, where he shaked a card for it was a whole day or something in order for it to do damage, or maybe it didn't do. I don't. One thing he did in that video did actually damage the card, but it took a lot to damage a card. Gary used to tell stories about he would put a card in a dryer to have it spin around and move around to see if it would damage it at all, and it wouldn't. So all right, so we got 15 more minutes here. Any indications people are starting to sell their sealed cupboard collections? Not sure if you mean if that's a saying that means the stuff that they really wouldn't want to sell, like their private collection, or if you're asking, I don't know. I think that, excuse me, I think that a lot of people are looking to sell something because they're anxious and worried. I'm not sure there's too many people who are like, I need to get out and sell everything, but there's some people who, but they want, a lot of these people want to buy back in. So they want to sell to get more money to be able to buy back in if it goes lower. Most interactions I'm having are with people like that. Now, of course, anyone who finds this channel is probably unlikely to just like this is pretty deep in, right? So it's people who like really enjoy this stuff, want to put long amounts of time, are part of like a community of people who really enjoy it, have friendships. It's going to be more of those types of people on average. And so those types of people are way more unlikely to leave the hobby ever. So it's really more about strategizing how to not lose money, or how to build as big of a collection over time as they can for as little money as possible. And so they're selling now with that idea of raising some capital so that they can continue to buy over a long period of time and be more successful in terms of building their collection in the long run, rather than people looking to sort of get out of the hobby because they don't enjoy it at all, or something like that, don't enjoy it anymore. But of course there are going to be people like that. I haven't talked to people like that myself, but I'm sure that there are going to be people like that. I mean, it's a humongous hobby with tons of people. I mean, I'm sure there are thousands of people like that. That I don't know, Roy, like what they should be. It's not something that I follow enough to really have a strong opinion of what it should be. Do amazing rares still have potential short, medium term? Or are they primarily long-term investments? Amazing rares are something that I'm a bit, I put them, I don't think that they're as good as the baby shinies. I'll just be completely honest. Now, they could outperform baby shinies in the long run because people just like them better. I personally I think the baby shinies they're shining. They're more unique in the sense. That's not true, actually. Unique's the wrong word. They feel more like a set, like a big set that they're going to continue to do for a long time, potentially, and weave in and out. And these are going to be like the first ones ever. And so they might continue to make those types of things in like 30 years from now. And I just think that there's a lot more upside. There's a lot more upside to something like a baby shiny than I think people think. I could end up being completely wrong about that. But as far as like price point and general like rarity, I put them at the same place. The market is flooded with both right now. Absolutely flooded. I would think like very long term. I mean, it depends what you mean, right? Like, because you could buy a whole lot of them and flip them tomorrow and make like 50% of your money. Like, if you bought a large lot and then you were patient enough, maybe graded some, flip some back one at a time. But we're not talking about big money here, and we're talking about potentially a lot of work for not much reward. But there are plenty of people in my Discord who are flipping baby shinies right now. They tell me about it and making money. So there's always sort of that option with these. But as far as like buying at market or above market and like holding them, and I want them to go up 10 times in value, this is not where I put my money. Definitely not. I would put it in baby shinies. I chose baby shinies over those. I do have some amazing rares that I do buy them if they're like, if I'm getting them at like 50 cents or something, 25 cents maybe, I find them a little appealing there, but not even that appealing, even at that value for me personally. I think if you're getting them already graded in 10s, if you can get like some of the better ones for like 12 to 15 to 20, but like they're still selling for like 30, 40, I think, like some of the better ones like the Rayquaza. So yeah, that, I'm fairly bearish on them, even though I think that they're really, really great art. I just think that it's going to be one of those things that's just so random and niche and people forget about. Now, will people remember them again someday and be like, oh, remember those amazing rares? Those were so cool. Possibly, I think it's a little bit like the break cards. Now, the break cards were, have been hated on a lot more than the amazing rares in terms of people not liking them. But the thing is that some of those break cards were from sets that were, other than evolutions, that were probably a lot less printed, which is part of why I like the break cards, particularly the Lugia. So, you know, but you can see how they do when they're not popular, like the prisms. And I know those have started to go up, but, you know, I'm talking about cards that are pulled in like, you know, the reverse hollow slot, and you get maybe 4 per box, you know, 2 to 4 per box. That sort of pull rate card. That's my general feeling on them. All right. Just going to do these last few questions here, and then we're going to end for today. Let's see. I wonder what will happen with the current, when current modern is no longer modern. Will the huge modern crowd still follow, or will they move on and it'll just drop off? Yeah, that's what will happen very likely. Now, it's not going to drop off like from 100 to 0. It's going to drop from like 100 to 80. It's the same thing that happened with Hidden Fates. You know, everyone was opening up. Everyone was obsessed with it for like 2. Now, the most popular sets like that, they have a much longer run. People are much more interested in opening them for a lot longer. They get bored a lot quicker. But if you want to see what people are into, watch to see what sets like PokeRev and Leonhardt, like what modern sets are Unlisted Leaf opening. They follow and open the stuff that's the most popular. Those are the things that most people have their eyes on, attention, want to see. Sets like lesser sets, you know, that aren't as popular. I mean, I like some of these sets, but like Astral Radiance, like, you know, Battle Styles, Chilling Reign, like they're not going to open nearly as much of that product. Sort of move on. They're going to open a lot more Hidden Fates, Evolving Skies. They're probably going to go back and open Hidden Fates again, Evolving Skies, because those would be popular enough. Some of these other sets, you know, they're going to really diminish, you know, but not to 0. They're still Pokemon sets. People still like them. They're still going to be alt arts and different cards inside that people want. It's just not going to be, they're just not going to be huge. They're not going to be, you know, the most talked about thing like they are now. Started working in school system this past year, and it's my first year being home for the summer. First time I was able to catch a live. When's the next one planned? Oh, sweet. Welcome. Thanks for asking your questions. I don't plan them so much, but probably. So this weekend is Father's Day on Sunday. I'm going to be pretty busy this weekend. I'm not sure I'm going to do one this weekend. I might be able to do one. If not, then probably like Monday, Tuesday. I'd like to do one maybe Friday, Saturday, but I'm just not sure I'm going to have the time. I try to do them unless I have like family events or other sorts of things. I'm trying to do them like every 3 days ish. And then more than that, if I feel like it. P Valley says, do you ever see prices diverging within the ADV PCG era for first edition versus UED? Currently, it seems like most don't care, perhaps because the perception is UED is more rare in that era. What are you asking? You ever see price diverging within the ADV? I have not seen these people call these things ADV before. What's ADV? I don't know. P-Belly, just tell me what these eras are. My brain's tired. What specific eras are you talking about here? And then you're saying, I think you're saying first edition versus unlimited, not UED. First edition versus unlimited. Yeah, I don't know. EX era. What's he asking? Oh, ADV and PCG within Japanese. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't familiar with those with ADV and PCG. So that's the original Nintendo EX era you're talking about here. Okay. So I literally went over all of this in my last Patreon last month, where I did a deep dive and broke down every single Japanese set. I didn't know that this is interesting, ADV and PCG. I'm gonna have to go look that up. I didn't know that terminology, but what I did is I broke down every single Japanese set in every era, including this era, and also broke down the unlimited versus first edition, and also compared it to English. And we kind of like went through all the data. All the data exists on the Patreon, where you can see all the price data, all the pop report data for first edition and unlimited. And it's interesting, right? I mean, this is something that like I've been buying up the unlimited for the past 4 months, specifically targeting unlimited in really high grade for some more popular cards. Because, as you're sort of alluding to here, as you know, clearly, in a lot of these sets, the unlimited is considerably less than the first edition. In other sets, it might be about even to first edition or slightly less, unclear. But in terms of the difficulty of finding some of the like unlimited versions of some of these sets, and now I haven't seen any breakdown, P Bailey, maybe you know more than me, that like ADV versus PCG, there's some sort of, where does it break? If you can let me know in terms of the actual set names. I'm not aware that, for me, it seems random. Like some of the earlier ones, there was more unlimited, than others. It doesn't seem to be a clear pattern where it was like these 3 sets that were together, these 4 sets were together. It seems like there are quite a bit, more unlimited cards for these than some of these other sets. And the data, I don't have it in front of me. I could pull it up, but when I went over it for everyone, seems to reflect that it's a little bit more random set to set. You'd think, just rationally speaking, that the sets with the most demand are going to have the most unlimited, because the way that it's talked about, at least the way that Hidden Legends is where it splits. Okay. Oh, you think it's Fire Red, Leaf Green? Okay. I'll look it up because I'm interested in those terms. When full transparent, like when I did the breakdown for the patrons, I had to look up a lot of the set names because I didn't even know every set name in Japanese, particularly for like the middle generations. Oh my gosh. Like there's so many names for all these Japanese sets that are different. I didn't even know. And I collect a lot in these eras and have a lot of cards from each of these sets. And I still didn't know the actual full names on some of these, long names too, for some of the sets. So Japanese Pokemon collecting is definitely a whole world into of itself with different names for every set, but whatever. But what was I saying before? Sorry, I'm getting a little bit tired. My perception of this, I guess, going back to your question here, is that I think that the unlimited, particularly in some of these sets, I mean, like, and I don't have my notes here, but off the top of my head, like World Champion, there were very few. Like finding those gold stars, like I try to buy the unlimited gold stars instead of the first edition gold stars of the evolutions, stuff like that. I think there's a lot of, I mean, even here, I think I put them away. But recently in PWCC, I bought a bunch of like unlimited hollows, like PSA 9s and some PSA 10s, and they're all like pop 1, pop 2. In part because they didn't have the value to grade any Japanese. But if you look at like the first edition side on just the regular hollows of some of these EX sets, there's going to be like 40 graded or 50 graded, and then there's like only 3 graded or 4 graded unlimited. That's a pattern that you might see. So I think there's some potential there. Again, it's rarity versus demand. But I think when more people find that out, you're going to see more people interested in the unlimited. And I think, but I think in general, all those markets are super niche in the West anyway. Like even just collecting Japanese, like original Nintendo EX era, like regular hollows, I think is pretty niche at this point. So I all of those markets are far, far, far from like fleshed out. And I think if they do become like, if they explode at all ever, you're going to see, I think the unlimited might explode crazy. Like I think some of these cards that I'm buying for $10, $15, $25 could be $500 cards. because they're pop ones, of cool hollow arts, and you can't find, like, the boxes are so hard to find and are so expensive. But it's a big what if. It's a big what if. I do think it's all undervalued in large part because these boxes are so expensive and so hard to find. I mean, if you go onto eBay right now and you try to find like just boxes, Japanese boxes from like original Nintendo EX, like go like into like the Diamond and Pearl, Black and White eras, like you'll find like a few, but you definitely won't find a few for each set, and you probably won't find a few of any set, in terms of like multiple of any one set. There'll be like 7 boxes from like the entire 3 generations on eBay, something like that. And they're asking really huge prices usually. So, if you go on Buy.e and you search, you might have some more luck. But I've tried to buy these for a long time, and it's just hard to find them. So I think we're gonna end there. I'm sorry, I'm fading a little bit. I'm a little bit tired. Great questions as always. Thank you for that great ending question. Appreciate all of you for hanging out. If you can do me, a real, big favor, if you can subscribe to the channel, if you like what we're doing here, I would greatly appreciate that. Like the video, comment. If you find what we do interesting on my Patreon, I do much deeper actual like data analysis. A lot of the conclusions we talk about here are from the data analysis, but I actually, present more of the data. You actually have access to like the many spreadsheets, the presentations that we've already done. So for $10 a month, you get access to a lot, a ton of content. And then also like spreadsheets and documents and all sorts of things that, if you're very interested in this stuff, will undoubtedly be valuable to you. And the link for that is below. And otherwise, I just hope everyone has a great day. And as always, just like appreciate you guys hanging out here, asking great questions. You guys make the stream. So, and I'll see you all hopefully, early next week or so. And I guess my take home message, for today, at the end, just as a reminder, just enjoy yourself, pace yourself, have fun. Try not to get too caught up in the market right now. More broadly speaking, I feel like unfortunately I have to, because I'm studying and working now probably to become a financial advisor, and working more fully in the field. But I can tell you, if I wasn't and more engaged, I'd turn a lot of the noise off. I think it's important to listen to and engage in the really good stuff. And to like listen to like, earnings reports, and listen to like when the Fed chairman, when he speaks, like that's good. But a lot of the like panicky news and, oh my gosh, it's going to go it's going to go up. What do you do if everything crashes? Like that stuff can unless it's someone who's like helping, soothe you with sort of reasonable expectations, a lot of that stuff can drive you more crazy. It's better to just turn it all off and go for a run, be with your friends and family, be with your binders, go look at some of your cards. All right, guys, have a good rest of your day and see you soon.